No, friends, the garden got much, much bigger than what Adam had lived in the first part of Genesis. In fact, the garden got even grander with the arrival of the New Jerusalem. For like her predecessor, she too is a garden. And we're going to learn that. Remember, Jesus, through the writings of Solomon, called her a garden. Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 12. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 1a. I am come into my garden. Who is my sister, my spouse? That saying is not a coincidence. These passages are screaming loudly for us to understand them. For not only is this God's work at a given time in these past and present dispensations, but God is married to his work. And that work now for us today is strictly the children of the living God, the true church of the living God, the elect, as opposed to the old garden, which reeked more of that which was natural and carnal and had different types of people come in. Again, Egypt and Assyria. Okay? So the Old Testament garden had reflected more of that which was natural. But since the day of Pentecost, as we're going to continue to learn in here, that garden completely turned spiritual. And nobody anymore of natural leanings could get in. If you remember correctly from the Old Testament, Gentiles could come in if they followed the rituals of the Hebrews. So this is all spiritual now. This is where I'm going at with all of this. Spiritually speaking. All right. This is not a bride individually, but this is a bride collectively. God's work, God's covenant, God's testament. Now, individually, we're his born-again children. Well, children of he and of his bride, that is. As I'm trying to express during this chapter, and I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans. Are you ready for this? This bride, this wife, is none other than godly knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that I've been talking about. That's the bride. That is this New Jerusalem, not the old one. This New Jerusalem is the holy thoughts of God that he places inside of us. Don't worry, I will make this connection biblically. In a nutshell, the bride of Jesus is the mind of Christ. Really? Because the tree of life is the very heart and is in the very heart of the garden of God. Genesis 2:9b. The tree of life was also in the middle of the garden. Am I sure about all this? That sounds a little far-fetched, maybe? Well, let's consider the following as Solomon continues his dialogue. Proverbs 7:4. Say unto wisdom, you are my sister. Call understanding your kinswoman. Let's go to our next explanatory note for that, because this is very important. Kinswoman. We're going to call understanding our kinswoman. And our consideration of this word, kinswoman, which in my mind can be likened unto a wife. I ask the audience to bear with me. Certainly, the Hebrew dictionary has to be consulted in all of this. But when we do so, we are not really satisfied with its definition because of its severe shortness. Hebrew 41:29, moda, means an acquaintance, kinswoman, which can mean anybody from a sister to a neighbor down the street. However, this Strong's definition also gives us another hint, and it's in the form of the root word from which this one sprang, because it said from Hebrew 30:45. So let's go to Hebrew 30:45. To know properly and to ascertain by seeing. using a great variety of senses, figuratively, literally, including observation, care, recognition, causatively, I can't even say it right, instruction, designation, punishment. I mean, this is a very wide applicative word, but I want to get back to what it first said. What it first said was to know. That's important. Now, one thing, though, which can make this connection for us is the usage of knowing somebody with an intimacy, as of a man with his wife. Now, let's see this same Hebrew word, Hebrew 30:45, being used in Genesis and in direct connection between a husband and a wife. Genesis 4:1. Adam knew his wife, Eve. He knew his wife. Well, what happened when he knew his wife? She conceived, bare Cain, and said, I've gotten a man from the Lord. See it again, Genesis 4:17a. Cain knew his wife, same Hebrew word. She conceived and bare Enoch. Are you catching the picture here? Genesis 4:25a. Adam knew his wife again, Hebrew 30:45. She bare a son and called his name Seth. You catch what I'm saying here? Our connection here to kinswoman has to be a wife. Without doubt, knowing somebody in Scripture can be an activity that's practiced between a husband and a wife. The end results being nothing less than the birth of a child. This is why I feel justified in linking our word kinswoman, again, with a wife. For just as Adam knew Eve and bare a son, Jesus did the same with the New Jerusalem, as we're going to continue to see, and had sons and daughters. Not only, but in the upcoming pages, we're going to see how we'll be doing the very same thing, yet in a spiritual manner, to beget children in the Lord. And believe it or not, that was the last explanatory note. This must be a very short chapter here. Now, I'm going to reread this again, Proverbs 7, verse 4, from the main part of the book. Say unto wisdom, you're my sister. Call understanding your kinswoman wife. This is in direct connection to what we read in the Song of Solomon. Chapter 5, verse 1a. I am come into my garden, who is my sister and my spouse, my wife, my kinswoman. Friends, this is practically saying that this woman mentioned in this verse is our wife. The one I'm talking about is not where Jesus said, I'm coming to my garden, which is my sister and my spouse. I'm talking about in Proverbs chapter 7, verse 4. This is telling the audience that's reading this proverb, you need to say unto wisdom, you're my sister, just like what Jesus had done with the New Jerusalem. He called New Jerusalem his sister, his spouse. Now, Solomon is telling us, the reader, you need to say unto wisdom, you're my sister, and call understanding your wife, your kinswoman. I'm going to say this again. This is practically saying that this woman mentioned in this verse is our own wife. Again, I'm going to bring you into remembrance of the Song of Solomon. Verses, chapter 4, verse 12, and also chapter 5, verse 1a, where it not only said that the bride of Jesus, or the bride of Christ, which it's Jesus here, come on, was a garden, but also was his sister, to which, that is the sister part, I'm going to get in more detail about soon enough of why, and he not only called it his wife, but he also called that garden his sister. But still, and even so, I just said that Proverbs chapter 7, verse 4 was speaking of our wives. Okay, this is getting pretty deep here. And I said that, and I meant it. For as I'm going to show in the upcoming pages, that not only is the bride of Jesus the mind of Christ, but when we put on the mind of Christ ourselves, we're not putting on the bride unto us to become our headship of our inner man, But we are instead putting on the daughter of Jerusalem onto our heads. This daughter is not only the daughter of the blessed couple, but she's also our sister and becomes, spiritually speaking, of course, the wife to our inner man. Is this getting strange? Not really, when we consider that there are scriptures that actually back this notion. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to do as we read this. This new chapter here is starting a whole new course that this book is now turning into, as you can see. And I understand that if I picked your interest here, you're going to have to wait until I read some chapters from some of my other books to get back to this one. Again, this was a short chapter, but it is actually a reintroduction to the direction that I'm now going to be heading into. This just set the sail. That's all it's done, this chapter here. But as we're going to get into chapter 6 on, we're going to see where I'm going to get into more intricate details and actually use scriptures to back up what I'm saying. More than what I've already used. I've used a few scriptures to show where I'm starting from. But I'm going to start getting into the words of the Apostle Paul because he picks back up on this. A lot of people miss this. There's things in there a lot of people miss. And that's what I want to pick back up on. So anyways, I hope that I haven't lost my audience with this. I hope I got your interest up. I hope you'll join me again when we get to chapter 6 of this book. And I'll get to it as soon as I can. As soon as I can. But like I said, I'm reading 3 other books now. And I want to continue on each subject because this may not interest everybody. Some of the other books may interest people more than what this one is doing. So hopefully in these 4 books that I'm reading, I'm going to get somebody's interest up. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching this video or these videos, these short videos for this chapter. And I'll have the chapter 6 up as soon as I can. So have a good day.